Hi everyone! So I missed making a video last week, mostly just because I've been so incredibly busy. And I know I made an update video fairly recently, it might have just been 2 videos ago, but I thought that I would make another kind of update video about kind of a slightly different topic, because I mostly was talking about my tattoo in that video, a little bit about the PhD, but mostly about my tattoo and my cat and my experience with that and dealing with grief and so on. So I thought that I would make one more specifically about the PhD and kind of more generally my creative process, because basically everything that I'm really busy with right now is all to do with creativity and writing. I'm just doing an incredible amount of writing, and yeah, I thought this would be a good opportunity to maybe make another such video. I made a video like this a few months back about the creative process. I've made a couple over the years, but yeah, I thought that I might have a couple of new things to say, or new kind of processes. I'm kind of in a new stage of writing with both my PhD and with my creative writing. So yeah, without further ado, my PhD is currently in kind of the same stage that it's been for a while, and that I am writing, but it's a slightly different phase of writing. My second year of my PhD was writing in a very kind of, it didn't feel very loose, it felt very constricted, because what I'm doing, if you have watched previous videos of mine, you might know that I'm doing a PhD on the Dark Goddess, and what I'm doing is essentially textual analysis. So I'm analysing about 12 books with the Dark Goddess in their titles, and I'm also going to be analysing some YouTube videos, and then I'm kind of bringing all that together to kind of see what I can say about the Dark Goddess and her worship in contemporary paganism, or just the general sort of goddess spirituality movement. But because it's so kind of focused on textual analysis, I found that a lot of the writing that I was doing in the first year of kind of actual writing was really just it felt very derivative. It felt very much like I was just pulling quotes from one place and into another document and compiling them until they created a paragraph, and just paraphrasing. You know, I spent a lot of time just paraphrasing paragraphs, and it was very constrictive creatively and so on. And that was quite frustrating. It kind of got me to feeling, honestly, like there was nothing creative about the PhD process. I felt very much that I was stuck in this mode of having to kind of describe everything, analyse everything, and be very kind of precise and all-encompassing with what I was doing, because I was doing such kind of close readings and wanting to really get to grips with what the main topics of these books and videos really are, what the themes are, and really exploring those themes and so on. So yeah, it kind of felt quite restrictive, but since beginning my third year, which theoretically, kind of confusing, I took a couple of months out, so theoretically I don't really start until December, but yeah, to all intents and purposes I am now in my third year. And I had a meeting with one of my supervisors, and he's been kind of encouraging me to really kind of loosen up my writing. And the piece of advice that he gave me, which, you know, so far has been really, really helpful and has really gotten me into a different mode of writing, was, you know, pick a story, find a narrative in your chapter or in what it is that you want to say, and start with that, describe that, get into that, and use that to kind of loosen it up and to kind of drive the direction of the chapter and of the PhD. And I found that just to be so helpful. I think it really just got me back to realising and remembering what it was that excited me about this material in the first place. So what I've actually been doing is mostly focusing on YouTube videos, actually, because I feel like they are such innovative and inspiring and exciting testimonies of people's experiences with, you know, well, across the board, various different forms of paganism, including the Dark Goddess. And they're just the really engaging part of this material. They're the part where people describe their experiences and really get quite up close and personal with the viewer about how this theology really plays out in reality in somebody's life. And so yeah, really digging into that and exploring that and seeing where, you know, how I've interpreted that, what kind of narrative I create out of that, has been really interesting. So I guess it's kind of also playing into my strengths, and I would say this with any kind of creative project. So yeah, getting back to what it is that excited you about it in the first place is just so vital to getting the ball rolling and getting you back to feeling like you're creating something of worth. Because if you get too far away from what it was that drew you into this topic in the first place, then obviously you're going to lose sight of what it is that's valuable about the piece of work that you're working on. Like, I was starting to lose sight of that because I had forgotten. I wasn't in touch with what it was specifically about the Dark Goddess material that interested me and drew me in the first place. And with me, it really is all about the stories. It's all about the kind of the narratives, the personal narratives, and that hook of an interesting story that will pull me in and get me thinking and wondering about something. And yeah, I would really recommend that if you're in the middle of a creative or academic project and you're really like struggling and feeling that kind of sense that I had of it being very kind of stale or sterile, and you've lost sight of the value of what it is that you're producing, then yeah, getting back to what it was that kind of excited you in the first place, and maybe doing literally what I did and thinking about, well, what's the story in this? Like, how can I tell this in a more kind of almost kind of creative narrative kind of flow? I'm finding it hard to describe that, but as soon as I started doing it, it made sense to me. I mean, I would say that so where I'm at the moment with the PhD, like the focus of it right now is on, and this kind of works with that narrative theme, like using the narrative, the personal narrative, to drive the flow of the PhD. My focus is on the relationship between the Dark Goddess and the self. That means that I'm really like delving into people's experiences with the Dark Goddess, how they describe her, how they describe their experience. But of course, because I'm doing it from a social scientific perspective rather than a kind of confessional or theological one, I'm not taking any stance as I go on the experiences of these individuals. So I think that in a way was kind of what was a stumbling block for me as I originally was working, because I felt like I wasn't free to start just talking about these people's experiences in my own voice. Like, I almost just had to keep it very sterile and contained and just descriptive. And obviously that's just not going to fly. Like, that's just not going to make for an interesting piece of work. So it's an interesting balance between, you know, not going down the road of theology, not going down the road of making any assumptions or taking any sort of stance on the beliefs and the worldviews of these people, but at the same time representing them and just discussing them and describing them. And I think at the end of the day then, once I've gone into the detail of what the Dark Goddess experience is, then the kind of conclusions that I'll be coming to will be more politically oriented rather than theological in nature. And to be honest, I think this kind of suits me anyway, because I have quite a fluid understanding of divinity, because I'm pantheistic rather than polytheistic, there we go. It kind of makes sense for me to not necessarily be making any kind of value judgment or any kind of overt discussion like that about the content of these people's theology, because I'm not really interested in saying whether or not I think it's true. That has never been my way of engaging with spiritual content. It's just never been what I'm up to. I'm never really too concerned with whether or not something that somebody believes is literally true or not. That's just not, that question in and of itself to me at this point doesn't really even make sense. So what's much more interesting for me, I guess, in this kind of social scientific context is to discuss the political ramifications. How does it tie in with the politics that it's situated in, with the society that it's situated in? I'm really interested in the idea of resistance and political resistance, and how that is or is not encased within these kinds of spiritual movements as alternative spiritual movements, and just what ways in which I can see forms of resistance appearing across this material. And I'm just interested to see where that goes. So that's very far down the line. That'll be like the last kind of chapter that I write. So I'm kind of focusing on writing the first chapters first and then seeing where they take me. I've discovered through this process, and also through working on my novel, that I am quite a kind of spontaneous and disorganized creator. This is not something that I was expecting at all. And this kind of ties back into something I was saying in my last video about the creative process and creative habits, where I was saying that, you know, it's not kind of a one size fits all when it comes to creative habits and work schedules and work routines. And I think we can really, as I was saying in that video, we can really beat ourselves up for not adhering to what another person says is the most productive thing for them. And, you know, for me, in that previous video, I was talking about work schedules and how that doesn't work for me, and how I've discovered that I'm actually quite scattered, and I work in bursts and then I take time off, and trying to force myself into a regular routine is just really stifling and anxiety inducing for me. And so it makes sense that translates into the actual act of creating the thing itself. I think I used to always think that I had to have like a detailed plan, and that I would need to have a clear idea of where the PhD, the project, was going before I could actually start writing anything. And it's been a long time since I've been aware that that doesn't work for me, but it might be worth saying it to you, because I have friends who they will write such a detailed plan of their chapter, of their thesis, before they write anything, that they can then sit down and write, you know, 10,000 words in a week, because they've already got this plan that is frankly, you know, 5,000 words long or whatever, that is detailing what every single paragraph is going to be saying. And even thinking about writing in that way just makes me it just doesn't work for me at all. Like, I'm all about putting words on paper and expressing what it is I'm thinking, getting the thoughts on paper, and not only that, but just following a line of narrative, a thread of narrative, and seeing where it takes me. And yeah, you might fall somewhere in the spectrum between those two kind of creative processes, and I think that's absolutely okay, as long as you're not kind of destructively leaving everything to the last minute or whatever. I think whatever creative process you end up having is completely valid, and I think the important thing is to not be trying to squeeze yourself into a process that really doesn't fit you. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned in working on two such big projects, so I'm working on my PhD, obviously, I've been working on it for 2 years, I've got another year at least to go, and then I'm currently working on a novel as well. I'm in the latter stages of finishing a draft of a novel that I've been working on and off for about 7 years. And well, really I've been working on it seriously for about 1.5 years-ish, maybe slightly less, so slightly more than a year. And through working on both of those projects, I think I feel like when I go into my next big writing project, I will know what to expect of myself. I will know how to start, I will know how to keep the momentum going, I will have a better idea of how to go about it and how to get it done maybe slightly quicker, because I understand now what my process is. But unfortunately, the only way you really figure that out is by doing and by trying it out, and like maybe working on smaller scale projects first, and then you start to get an idea. Like I think doing my master's degree right before my PhD was actually invaluable for me, because it meant that I had to write my dissertation. It was only 15,000 words, but it did give me an idea of what kind of creative process I have to create a largish chunk of work. So yeah, it definitely gave me a preview into what to expect of myself going into the PhD. But yeah, it really just is a work in progress, and I feel like it has taken me 7 years to figure out how I write a novel, for example, and I think I'm realising now that expecting myself to know what that would look like and to enjoy the process immediately and for it to flow easily and for it to be easy was honestly naive. And my original idea that I was going to have this great novel draft written in a single year when I was 22, in hindsight, not really realistic. Maybe if I had been working towards long form fiction seriously up to that point, maybe, but I think it's taken me years and years of continually coming back to projects and figuring out, where did I get stuck? Why did I get stuck? What needs to happen next? Yeah, and I mean, I could try and describe that process to you. I could describe to you, you know, how many chunks of words I write at a time and how I then structure them together and to what extent I plan. For me, it's very much a write, then plan, write, then plan, write, then plan. So I'll write a chunk of stuff, then I'll look at it and be like, what is this? What's the general plot? And then I'll keep writing and then I'll kind of go, oh, okay, how does this fit together? And it tends to just get more and more convoluted and different threads of narrative appear and I'm like, I don't know what all these are, how they're going to fit together, and then eventually it comes together and I start to see how they fit. And so I need to keep coming back to the drawing board and planning and saying, right, okay, these are these chapters. And then in the latter stages of the novel process, editing process, now I'm really just like copying, pasting chunks of writing around different parts of different chapters to try and figure out the narrative flow and then filling in the gaps. So I've still got bits of actual writing to do, but it's mostly just filling in the gaps of kind of everything that I've already written. But like explaining that to you is only really, it's not even that helpful because everyone's processes are different. And yeah, so I guess my big takeaway point from all of this would just be just do it. And even if you think that you're not going to be able to write a good novel, write a good academic paper, or do whatever kind of project that you want to do, even if you don't think right now that you're going to necessarily do it well, the obvious advice is just to start anyway. But I think I cannot emphasize how important it is that you start anyway. It's not just for the sake of having something to show for yourself at the end of the day rather than just not having done anything. It really is just absolutely crucial and vital to the creating process itself to actually, you know, you have to flip a few pancakes and mess them up a few times before you kind of get into the flow of it and figure out how it works for you. So I think if you're at that stage where you're thinking, oh, I'm not ready to write a novel, I'm not good enough yet, my writing isn't good enough, or whatever, that's exactly the time I think that you should start trying to see how it works for you, what you writing a novel actually looks like. And yeah, don't expect it to go perfectly and smoothly, and don't give yourself any like crazy expectations and deadlines and stuff. You know, let the process just unravel and let it flow and let yourself figure out how it goes for you. So I think that's probably everything potentially useful that I have to say about my PhD, about the creative process, about writing, about fiction writing, about writing novels. I think I'll just finish off with a little bit of sort of semi-housekeeping-esque kind of updates, just to kind of put my intentions out there and let you know what I'm planning and where I'm at right now with Anya Orga and so on and so forth. So as I mentioned, I am really, really busy right now. You've probably noticed if you're a follower of mine that really all I've been keeping up with recently is making videos-ish a week, kind of weekly, and not really keeping up with anything else. I do post occasionally on Instagram, and that's kind of the only place that I'm really posting apart from YouTube. And that's been my primary focus for now with Anya Orga. I want to keep myself in a flow of creating content, and even on those weeks when I really can't think of anything particular to say, I will come up with something and make it and keep that flowing, because I don't want to lose momentum. But really my focuses right now are on really my novel. I've given myself a deadline of my 30th birthday to finish a full draft of my novel, and I'm taking that very, very seriously. So I'm actually spending quite a large chunk of my time working on that at the moment. My PhD, obviously, it's third year. I don't want to go into a fourth year. I want to have my PhD finished by the time I turn 31. So I'm turning 30 on Halloween, just to give you an idea, on Samhain. 31st of October, and then I'll be turning 31 in just over a year. So obviously I have a lot of writing to do with that as well. I'll have deadlines from my supervisor. It always takes up a lot of time. I'll also be tutoring this year for the first time, so that will be taking up a lot of my time as well. I'll be teaching a class of about a dozen second year undergraduate students, a course called Studying Religions. So that will be, I think it'll be fun, but it'll be time consuming, especially in the first semester when I'm just figuring out how tutoring works for me. And then finally, I'm also running a lot right now because I have decided to try to run a 10K before my 30th birthday as well. So I've given myself all the deadlines. Oh, and then finally, of course, I have been posting regularly on another Instagram account, which I mentioned in the previous video, but in case you didn't hear about it, I will keep talking about it regularly. I've been posting tarot pictures and, well, tarot cards and interpretations on an Instagram page, a new Instagram account called Wild Heart Tarot. So Wild Heart, all one word, .tarot. I'll link that below as well. And yeah, I kind of have this vague idea that I'm going to pick that project up and run with it further, maybe in the new year, that I might start blogging, make a website, get a little bit more focused on it as a thing, start offering readings again and that kind of thing under the name Wild Heart Tarot rather than just under Anya Orga. So, you know, I'm juggling a lot right now, but basically my intention with Anya Orga is that I do want to start coming back to Anya Orga, focusing on Anya Orga probably after my birthday, so before Christmas and certainly in the new year. So what I'm hoping is to start blogging again, to start thinking about what kind of content I want to create again, to start focusing more on spirituality, on the creation of a spiritual practice and helping people with that and so on. And I do want to start offering spiritual mentoring. I intend to do so sometime early in 2019. So I'll be starting with something simple, probably audio file mentoring, where you can kind of, as I used to do with the tarot readings, where I used to do video readings, I'd say I'll do a system where you can kind of send me a question, give me some background, have a little chat over email, and then I'll create you an audio file and just giving you a bit of direction and a bit of mentoring and offering you my best advice basically for your situation at the moment regarding your spirituality, your spiritual practice, or really anything remotely related, just anything in your life really that you're struggling with, that you want a kind of spiritual slant, a spiritual perspective on. So that'll be something that I want to start doing. I really do want to start thinking again about who I'm trying to help as Anya Orga and what I want to create and that kind of thing, and then so much more to come. But that's the rough plan, so hopefully you'll be seeing more from me in the new year. Once I've got a draft of the novel, I'll be putting that sort of on the back burner after that, so I'll have a little bit more free time. And yeah, I think that's everything you need to know for now. If you enjoyed this, do give me a thumbs up and comment down below and let me know what it was particularly about it that you liked. I am very happy to make more videos about PhD if anyone has any particular questions, and about kind of the creative process or about novel writing, anything like that. I'm happy to answer questions in comments down below. I know I can be slow to reply to comments, but especially if you ask me a question, I do endeavour to eventually get back to you. So yeah, I hope you're all well. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon.